Hey everyone, thank you for joining. We just recapped all the league division series and previewed the LCSs between the Rangers and Astros and the Phillies and Diamondbacks.
We also talked about Arcia Gate and our thoughts on it and maybe the impact that it made on the Phillies, Braves, and LDS, and talked about the current state of the postseason format and maybe if it should change, if it should stay the same, if there's any reason to react to it.
Let's get into it.
Baseball isn't just numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking
Weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are above replacement radio. And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing well again today. We had some very fun baseball over the last few days. We have the LCSs all set to go after just a maximum of 4 games. We had 2 sweeps, 2 go to 4 games, no game 5s, unfortunately, but we got some interesting matchups coming up in the LCSs.
Yeah, I mean, these are obviously two matchups that I would not have predicted heading into this postseason. You know, did not think the Diamondbacks would make it this far, did not think the Rangers would make it this far. At least, you know, before they faced off against the Rays, I did not think they were getting out of that series. So them coming along this far is not only surprising, but also pretty pleasant to see because, you know, I do tend to root for the teams with the longest droughts, and they have the longest drought out of anyone that entered this postseason this year. So, you know, good to see them making their way. They, you know, swept the Rays, swept Baltimore, you know, swept the best teams in the AL East. And yeah, it'll be very interesting to see that All Texas American League Championship Series.
Yeah, I guess the Rangers do have the biggest drought, right? Because they were the Washington Senators just before the Brewers were the Seattle Pilots by like what, less than 10 years.
Yeah, didn't the Pilots come around
1969?
1969.
Yep.
Yeah, so that is the case. I mean, I guess technically like them as Texas maybe didn't have the longest drought.
No, but I mean, they were the Washington Senators.
Yeah. So that organization.
Actually, I think they did they go to Texas in 70?
They might. I know it was in the early.
Maybe
70s.
It was 71.
Yeah, it was in the early 70s, and yeah, it was so them as Texas was around the same time as the Brewers in Milwaukee.
Right, because the Brewers in Milwaukee was 1970.
Yeah.
And they did have the Milwaukee Braves, which won a World Series there, I believe.
That is true.
So it's not like the city. Okay, yeah, they became the Texas Rangers in 72, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
the overall franchise has existed the longest, but the actual current location, if we're going by that, Milwaukee would have a longer drought technically, but you know, who cares?
Who cares?
Like 2% of baseball fans.
Yeah. They don't have that on the TV graphics.
No.
But yeah, I mean, what have been your takeaways so far before we dive too deep of these past, few days of baseball?
Yeah, I mean, I think we could just start with the Orioles-Rangers series because that's the first one we have in our notes, and also I believe it was the first one to have started, right? We already talked about game 1 and 2. Game 3 was, I don't know, it was kind of, I guess, what you could have expected, given the way that the first 2 games went, and also the pitching matchup being much more in the Rangers' favor. Dean Kremer, he's a guy that does kind of surrender the long ball. He's a fly ball pitcher. From what I'm pretty sure he's a fly ball pitcher, right? And he gave up a home run in the first inning to Corey Seager, a home run in the second inning to Adolis Garcia.
Correct.
Third inning?
Second inning, yeah.
Yeah, it was second inning. Dean Kremer, a guy with a 26.8% fly ball rate. The league average is 23%. So And then a line drive rate of 28%, with the league average being at 25%. So, I mean, you know, you look at the Rangers offense, you look at the way that they had been hitting in that series, you look at Dean Kremer's, batted ball tendencies, and it looked very questionable, especially going up against Nate Eovaldi, and that's kind of exactly what we saw. Nate Lowe also hit one. I think that was off of a relief pitcher though, but he crushed a ball. He got in on a fastball and took it out to right field.
Yeah. And as far as, game 3 went for Rangers Orioles, this could have been expected to a degree. We all knew it was a big starting pitching mismatch with how Eovaldi went in the previous playoff game and how Kremer had gone, the whole season. He had a 4.12 ERA this year and a 4.96 expected ERA in 2023. And, obviously the Orioles' third option as opposed to the Rangers' second option. And yeah, Dean Kremer, unfortunately, didn't have a great day. He had 12 batted balls against him, 4 line drives for a 33% rate, and 2 barrels, which is, 2 barrels and 12 batted balls. That's a very high rate. And also in the 13 batters faced that he had, Dean Kremer did not strike out anybody, and he had a 17% whiff rate against. And he faced 22 2-strike counts and had no whiffs against him on 2-strike counts, no called strikes, 9 foul balls, 7 balls out of the strike zone, and 3 hits on those 2-strike counts. So unable to finish hitters off, unfortunately. That's also credit to the Rangers for staying tough with 2 strikes. But yeah, I mean, it fell over after the Adolis Garcia 3-run home run.
I mean, I think it effectively was over after that. It even felt over after the Corey Seager home run, because, I mean, like, anytime you see the Rangers offense just getting going early, like, you get the feeling that, it's only getting started, right? Like, you don't see them, you haven't seen them in these playoff games score a couple runs early and then kind of mellow out from there. Like, it only picks up once they start.
Yeah, and it feels like in the playoffs, like, if you want to win on the road, you got to score first. It just feels like that. I don't have much statistical analysis on that, except for I was looking at stuff with the Phillies last night. But yeah, like, falling behind on the road, especially when you're behind in the series generally, it's not a recipe for success. And yeah, it just seemed to have a tumble down effect with the first and second innings. And yeah, like, I mean, big credit to the Rangers. I mean, they were, through and through the better team for all 3 games.
Yeah, no, I mean, they fundamentally looked like it, no doubt. Yeah, I mean, the only close game was game 1, and even then, it felt over after the Gunnar Henderson caught stealing. Like, that felt like the most hope the Orioles had of winning a game was when Gunnar Henderson reached first, at that one point. I don't think the Orioles ever held a lead at any point. Or no, they did. Did they hold them in game 2?
For 1 inning, for half an inning, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they went up 2-0 in game 2, and then immediately the Rangers scored 5 runs.
That was the one I couldn't watch.
Yeah, right. And on the other side of the other guy taking the hill was Nathan Eovaldi, who, as we mentioned, has a great postseason resume and continued it on, what was it, Tuesday night. He went 7 innings strong, 1 run allowed, no walks, 7 strikeouts. Also, what was crazy to me, a 48% chase rate and 57% in zone rate. So he threw it in the zone, but when he didn't throw it in the zone, he got a lot of swings against him. And this is a stat from Sarah Langs, saying that he had a 77.6% strike rate, which was the highest strike rate in a postseason start since 2000, minimum 90 pitches. So he was, filling up the strike zone, and when he wasn't filling it up, he was getting guys to chase. Also, Eovaldi had tied for the most pitches thrown in the zone in a playoff game this year, and the second most swings on pitches outside the zone in a playoff game this year, which is an incredible combination.
Great combo, yeah.
It's a hard combo to get. considering like if you're filling up the zone, you're going to throw less pitches out of the zone, but he still found a way to get a lot of swings out of the zone. So, I mean, that just a masterclass of a big game Nate right there.
Yeah, and I mean the Rangers looked. I mean, yeah, obviously the Orioles were the better team on paper, right? They won 101 games. The Rangers won what 80, 88, I think, 87, 88 games.
I think they might have won 90 and lost the tiebreaker to Houston.
Maybe around that ballpark, right? But
Yeah, not
I
crazy.
mean, but I mean, it was that was a complete dismantling. And, you know, the Orioles are a team that like a lot of people look at and say they'll be back. And I mean, yeah, I said this on last show, but I mean, if they're not back, something went horribly wrong. But like this is a team that can now say that they have playoff experience, even if it's not a lot, even if it's the bare minimum. They can take that into next year, to hopefully get some starting pitching. There's going to be a decent amount out there. Um, Maybe not like super high profile guys, but outside of like Yamamoto, Shohei Ohtani, um, Blake Snell, Aaron Nola, but hopefully they have better starting pitching. Hopefully Grayson Rodriguez takes a step forward. Maybe Kyle Bradish takes another step forward, and they have a more complete playoff rotation next year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of the first thought you think of coming out of this series is like, how are they going to be able to get a deeper starting pitching staff? Because that's part of what held them back. I mean, Bradish did well, but Rodriguez and Creamer were unable to perform to the level they needed to. So yeah, you wonder what their offseason looks like. The Orioles are not, historically not a very aggressive organization. But this is clearly a window for them. But also, a lot of it depends on ownership, as we know. And, John Angelos has been, historically, or at least as of late, talking in very cheap terms, not being very publicly aggressive on his team. Already,
I'm pretty sure he had a quote this year, like already talking about how he's not going to be able to afford like to extend Adley and Gunnar and everyone.
yeah.
Which it's like they're in their first year of service time. Like you do not need to say that now.
Exactly. Yeah, it was pretty lame. Something I would not want to hear as an Orioles fan. But
No.
but yeah, and I mean, this is one for the nerds, but a win for Pythagorean win-loss because the Rangers had a better run differential than the Orioles coming into this one. But
Yeah.
that's that's beside the point. The Rangers just dominated them through and through and had a very good roster to come into this one. Anything more before we head into Astros Twins?
No, I mean, I don't know. The Rangers looked really impressive. And yeah, I mean, they've beaten a 99 win team and a 100 win team. They've beat 200 wins worth of teams already in just the first two rounds, which is very impressive.
Yeah, and somehow it feels like they haven't faced their toughest test yet, which is the 90 win team
Yep.
in Houston, because
Yeah, they're gonna pull. Yeah, they're in a position to pull a 2022 Padres, like beat a 100 win team in the wild card round, beat a 110 win team in the NLDS, and then lose to the 88 win Phillies or whatever it was.
right, exactly. Yeah, I mean the Astros.
I mean, they're in prime position to do that, but they're also in prime position to, you know, look at the Astros and say, hey, if we beat these two teams, we can beat this team as well.
Yeah, and they could be the Phillies, who also last year beat two 100 win teams, and then beat the Padres.
No, the Cardinals were not a 100 win team, were they?
Oh wait, I was thinking of yeah, no, I was thinking of the Mets, and yeah, the Padres beat the Mets. My bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cardinals were a 93 win team, but
Yeah.
regardless, yeah, the Astros have now won 14 of their last 17 playoff games, which is pretty absurd. And yeah, the last two of those wins came against the Twins on Tuesday and Wednesday. One in an absolute slaughter of a game, and then the other in a pretty tight matchup, that was kind of a weird game. Not only one combined plate appearance with runners in scoring position, but I mean, what were your thoughts on the past couple games for this one?
I mean, yeah, the Astros obviously looked like a better team. I mean, I think, coming out of the Pablo Lopez start in game 2, a lot of people felt good about the idea that the Twins could just take one in Minnesota and at least send it back to Houston and put the ball back in Pablo Lopez's hand. But yeah, they were overmatched in these 2 games. Sonny Gray gave up 2 home runs in a game for the first time since September of 2021. Which is pretty rough. Jose Abreu finally came alive. We've been waiting for that all year. And it finally seems like, that contract is starting to look pretty good for the Astros, because even if he didn't produce a lot in the regular season, right? I mean, he's winning them games in the postseason. He hit a 3-run home run in the first inning of game 3, which that made it 4-0. I mean, that took the Twins crowd out of it early. And he hit another one in he hit the eventual game-winning home run in game 4, and he hit another one in game 3, later in the game, I believe, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm pretty sure he and Royce Lewis are tied for the most playoff home runs in Target Field history.
Yeah, that is very funny. That is very funny. Because I mean, I think he must have hit 3 home runs in this series, and that's why
He did.
he did that. So yeah, the Astros win 9-1 in game 3, and yeah, for me it was like a complete flip-flop of what I thought the starting pitchers were going to do. I thought if there was a guy who was going to have a blow-up start, I thought it was going to be Christian Javier, given what he's been doing the last few months. And I thought if there was a guy that was going to go 5 shutout innings, I thought it was going to be definitely Sonny Gray, who, is probably going to be a Cy Young finalist this year. But it was the reverse results. Sonny Gray allows 5 runs on 2 home runs, and Christian Javier goes 5 shutout innings. And he really locked it down with runners in scoring position. He didn't necessarily prevent a lot of base runners, but he prevented them from coming in. He had 8 batters faced with runners in scoring position, had 1 walk, no hits, no runs allowed, and 5 strikeouts on those 8 batters faced with a 71% whiff rate. He really executed his pitches down the stretch, which was pretty amazing to see. It's what you need to do in the postseason. And a fun stat I had was that Christian Javier had 13 whiffs on 16 swings against his slider, which was the highest whiff rate on sliders in a single playoff game in the pitch tracking era, minimum 10 swings on sliders. So that was very fun. I mean, what were your thoughts on how the starting pitching went from both sides here?
Yeah, I mean, Christian Javier is clearly just a different guy in the postseason. I mean, Jeff Passan had this tweet that was obviously a bit of a joke, but the last time he pitched in the postseason was the World Series no-hitter. He pitched 5, 6 no-hit innings. I think it was 6 no-hit innings, and then he made way for the bullpen. And he regressed in the start and gave up 1 hit. But yeah, I mean, he looked great. You had some good stats on this slider there. He was getting a lot of swing and miss. And Jose Urquidy also looked very good in game 4. The Twins struck out a grand total of 28 times in the 2 games. Which is insane. 14 times in each game they struck out, which is nuts.
Yeah. And
it also kind of just felt like the Twins were always behind in counts no matter what. That's how it felt. Even if it was if it was 1-0, if it was 2-1, 3, 2-0, maybe even 3-0. Every time that 3-1, every time that happened, it just felt like the Astros always found their way back into the count no matter what. And I wasn't able to find these stats, unfortunately, because the Savant Search doesn't have numbers through a certain count, and then the Fangraphs Splits leaderboard doesn't have postseason numbers. But I really wanted to see what the Twins numbers were on any at bats where they were at 1 point ahead in the count.
Right. Yeah. It would be very interesting because I mean there were times where it was like a 3-ball count with the bases loaded and you still didn't feel like there was much pressure on the Astros pitching. It felt like they were gonna execute, whether it be their starting pitcher or their guy out of the bullpen. And yeah, you mentioned the strikeouts in games 3 and 4. it was kind of historic what Astros pitchers and unfortunately Twins hitters were doing in games 3 and 4. They combined for a 47% whip rate in the final 2 games of the series rather. And games 3 and 4 had the 8th and 4th highest respective team whip rates in a playoff game in the pitch tracking era. There are 1,140 individual team games in this era, and both of these were top 10 in whip rates regarding the Astros pitching and Twins hitting. So yeah, I mean, the Astros pitching just seemed to have the Twins in a pretzel in games 3 and 4 here.
Yeah, it was. I mean, they just didn't have an answer, and I know that like they did have a couple moments, right? I mean, Edward Julian and Royce Lewis both homered in game 4. You know, game 4 was only a 1-run game, but it just felt like they were out of it for a lot of it until, you know, except for like a few brief moments where, you know, like Julian homered, like I mentioned, Royce Lewis homered. But yeah, I mean, they just looked overmatched at every point.
Yeah, and with all the strikeouts, it makes it, you know, a lot harder to get on base. So it made it so that those homers were solo homers and didn't do a crazy amount of damage. Yeah, like, you know, they you know, to credit to them, they tied the Astros in homers for game 4, but you know, unfortunately, one of the Astros homers was a 2-run homer, so it gave them the edge. And yeah, as game 4 was kind of weird, I mentioned, because all of the runs were scored via home run, and there was one combined plate appearance with runners in scoring position. So you didn't have those super high intense moments that maybe you had in game 3 or game 1, which is kind of funny, but yeah, that's yeah, I mean, that was kind of the Astros Twins series. You know, I was surprised to see what I saw in game 3, but ultimately seeing the Astros in 4, I mean, before the series started, we both said Astros in 4. So it's not that much of a surprise to see them to take this one. And yeah, I mean, they just seem to be a machine. With all these teams dropping in the first round after successful regular seasons, the Astros just seem to go on for whatever reason.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's so funny because we like you hear these conversations about like changing the playoff format, and like it's not fair for the teams with the off weeks between like the Braves, the Dodgers. The Astros just don't, it doesn't apply. Like, not only does it not apply, they've lost one game in like you mentioned, you know, they swept the Mariners last year. They lost one game against the Twins, and that was just, you know, Pablo Lopez coming out and being a dog, right? I mean, 7 shutout innings in that start. Like, you can't, I don't even think that's the kind of thing that you can blame on, you know, on the off week and whatever, which I hate that narrative so much to begin with. I think if there's a valid reason to criticize this postseason format, it's that like the wild card series just hasn't given us a lot of excitement. That's like probably the only legitimate reason to criticize this round, but you know, I mean, teams got to play better.
Yeah, and we might get into it more with, like, you know, the Braves, Phillies, and Dodgers Diamondbacks series, because yeah, I mean, those were the big examples of teams. You know, I mean, we expected so much out of these teams in the playoffs, and they gave us, you know, pretty much duds. If the Braves don't come back in game 2, I mean, that is a flat dud of a series for them. But yeah, as now to move on to Diamondbacks Dodgers, where the Diamondbacks swept the Dodgers. Yeah. I mean, we talked about games 1 and 2. Any particular thoughts on game 3?
You know, I think there's a lot of criticism going into Dave Roberts' decision to start Lance Lynn instead of Ryan Pepio. Pepio actually looked like a lot better during the regular season. Lance Lynn gave up 2.2 home runs per 9. Which, you know, I mean, if you follow any sort of trends, you'd understand that home runs are fundamentally what wins in the playoffs nowadays, right? I think teams that outscore their opponents this playoffs are like 14-1, which is like not far off from like the usual trends of different years. Ryan Pepio only pitched 42 innings this year, but he had a 2.14 ERA. He had a 7.6 strikeout to walk ratio, and 1.5 home runs per 9 still isn't good, but I mean, Lance Lynn had 2.2. Like, that's not going to cut it either way. And obviously, I mean, like, I'm not saying that Dave Roberts deserves the majority of the blame for this loss. I mean, when you get when you get swept and just completely dismantled the way the Dodgers did, like, it would take a legendarily bad managerial performance to have the manager take the most blame. Um, and Dave Roberts wasn't that bad. I mean, there wasn't really room for him to make many mistakes in this one, really, if you think about it.
Yeah,
But that was definitely a big question mark. And as we saw in Game 4, home runs were ultimately what killed the Dodgers in the end. Or
yeah.
Game 3.
And even if you had a really good start from your pitcher on what was it, Wednesday, that's still you still gotta outscore the Diamondbacks, and the Dodgers only scored 2 runs, and that was even with them having a deficit. And you would expect them to have a little bit more urgency to get more runs scratched across the plate. But the team that scored the second most runs in baseball scored 2 runs in each game of this series. So that's a lot of the reason why they struggled. Obviously, the Dodgers starting pitching was a pretty atrocious throughout the series, but it's not the only thing holding them back, clearly. But to get into how awful the starting pitching was of the Los Angeles Dodgers, they combined to go 4 2/3, have 13 earned runs allowed, a 25.07 ERA, 5 home runs allowed, 12.14 slugging against, 10.66 expected slugging against, and a 29% barrel rate against. So it was pretty rough, but still the Dodgers also scored 2 runs per game in this series. But yeah, I mean, we saw this as a flaw for the Dodgers heading into this postseason with their starting pitching, and yeah, they did not come through.
The fact that Bobby Miller in his 1 2/3 innings with 3 earned runs might have been the best performance out of any of the pitchers is like pretty scary.
Yeah, it's
because even though like Lance Lynn pitched more innings and gave up only 1 more earned run, like you gave up 4 home runs in an inning, and it even felt like 5 with the Moreno stuff. Like can we just like not like don't put in the scorebook obviously, but can we just count Moreno as having hit 2 home runs in that inning?
Yeah,
yes, of course that ball was foul. Like it was not a home run, but like I mean it had the same vibe even if it was foul.
Yeah, it was. I think now that the game's over and that the runs haven't scored, or that extra run wouldn't have mattered. Yeah, why not make it like 5-2 Diamondbacks in the end? Gabriel Moreno 2 home runs.
Yeah, he's the first player to ever hit back-to-back home runs in back-to-back plate appearances on back-to-back pitches.
On back-to-back pitches, yeah.
Yeah. How do you score that? I don't know, but
yeah, you just fill in. You just darken the when you fill in on the scorebook, you just darken it a little bit more.
Just ignore the fact. Like Dave Roberts it looks like if it's like 90 years from now and people are looking at game logs, it just looks like Dave Roberts could have like called him out for batting out of order.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, how did Moreno just hit 2 home runs in a row? It doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it was not the best. Yeah, Ryan Pepio, I'm looking at his numbers right now. Yeah, he would have been a fun guy to put in. Had a strikeout minus walk rate over 20%, which is really, really good. League average is around 14-15%. Also low average exit velocity against. Seems like it, yeah, low sweet spot percentage again. So just looking at and a 2.14 ERA, not to mention, which was really, really good. So, I do understand why fans would want him in over Lynn, but ultimately the Dodgers' offense did not perform to the level they should have. Overall in the series, the Dodgers had a 26% sweet spot rate, which was the lowest among LDS teams in this postseason or during the LDS series. And Mookie Betts, he went 0 for 11 with one batted ball between 0 and 32 degrees.
That might be crazier than the fact that he went 0 for 11.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. That means, either a negative launch angle or a fly ball that was, outside the sweet spot zone and, likely, falling into someone's glove, which it ended up doing. So yeah, they, just as an offense, they did not perform, especially, at the top.
No, I mean, Betts and Freeman combined to go 1 for 21. The only guys that really showed up on the offense, even like slightly, were like Will Smith, who went 3 for 4 in game 3, and then JD Martinez, who hit the only home run of the series for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
check.
it ultimately, I think it ultimately just came down to home runs, like who hit, like the discrepancy.
I mean, it also just came down to who hit, period. JD Martinez hit 200 with an 833 OPS. It's inflated because he homered. Will Smith hit 417 with a 1084 OPS. That's very good. He's all there. Those are the only two that had or at least that were in the starting lineup, or at least played in game 3 that had an OPS above 750.
Yeah, right.
Mookie Betts had an OPS under 100. Freddie Freeman's was 350. Max Muncy's was 432. David Peralta's was 500. Like you can't have that.
Yeah, and they did have some slight bad luck on batted balls, but still their expected WOBA, the main expected number, they were, I think, second worst in the LDS. Yeah, they had the second worst expected WOBA out of all the teams. Only the Braves did worse, funnily enough, who scored more runs than them in the regular season. The only team to do that. But so yeah, ultimately just feels like a failure on all fronts for Los Angeles. But enough Dodgers bashing, because there was a team who won this series, and that was the Arizona Diamondbacks, who very well earned it. I mean, they came out to play, and they, dismantled the Dodgers, outscored them by 13 runs, homered them by 8 home runs, which I think was much of the difference maker. So they prevented home runs at a great rate, and they got home runs at a great rate on offense. What are your takeaways from the Diamondbacks performance in general?
Yeah, getting into batted ball metrics specifically, 26.3% of all batted balls they had in this series were hard hit and in the sweet spot, which, those are two. I mean, the league average on those is very, very high, and they obviously did that as much as they could. They had 21 such batted balls. So that's good. Their bullpen has been pretty excellent, actually, which, that was kind of a weakness for them in the regular season, but their bullpen has done a lot better. Paul Sewald's been pretty automatic out of the pen. Kevin Ginkel has been taking the 8th innings, and he's been exceptional. Andrew Saalfrank has gotten out of a lot of jams, as we've talked about on this show. But like their bullpen has looked pretty stellar, both against the Brewers and against the Dodgers.
Yeah, they've really come through in the situations that they've really needed to. Which, I was not expecting. That's part of the reason why I had, both Milwaukee over them and the Dodgers over them, because, I didn't trust that bullpen. But, they just keep coming through in the big situations. They get guys out of jams, their fellow bullpen guys out of jams that happen multiple times in this series, as well as, the Milwaukee series. And yeah, it seems like you just got to get your bullpen hot at the right time, and it seems like the Diamondbacks are doing that.
Yeah, no, they absolutely are. A lot of the postseason is kind of just whose team will have a bullpen that gets hot at the right time, even if it's not a good bullpen in the regular season. Like you could look at the Braves in 21; they had 4 relievers between Minter, Matzik, Luke Jackson, and there was another one that I'm not remembering off the top of my head that all just became really good in the postseason. Even though, Will Smith, that's who it was. Will Smith was like really bad in the second half, and then he got really good in the postseason. So, it's all about who gets hot at the right time from the bullpen end.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like even like the 2018 Red Sox, like their September bullpen ERA was probably among the worst.
Yeah.
And then partially due to Alex Cora putting some of his starters in the bullpen, that helped out a lot. But you had guys like Matt Barnes, who was struggling, who came through big. Joe Kelly had a horrible September, and he had a fantastic October. So yeah, it seems like you just got to have the right guys lock in, and the Diamondbacks are doing just that. As an 84 win team, they're plowing through the playoffs so far. Yeah. So regarding the Diamondbacks, a credit to them for just putting the ball in the air hard. 9 home runs was the difference maker for them. They also had 13 barrels. They had the second highest barrel rate among these LDS teams during the LDS. But also they had the highest barrel rate of all pitches. So the Phillies had a better barrel rate among all batted balls, but the Diamondbacks had a higher barrel rate among pitches because they struck out less than the Phillies, I believe. So, they made contact, and when they made contact, it was very, very good contact. They had the second best expected WOBA of these LDS teams as well. So yeah, it seemed like all things were really firing for them, took some momentum from the Milwaukee series and just kept ramping it up.
I'm gonna look at barrels per plate appearance because I feel like that's a better metric for a team that struck out less.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure how to get that on the Statcast or on
the Diamondbacks barrels per plate appearance was 10.9. The Phillies was 10.4. Diamondbacks are the highest in the league.
Yeah,
among all the LDS teams. The Braves only had 2.8. That's crazy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, which is unbelievable for such a powerful team.
The Braves had 4 barrels in the entire series, 1 per game.
Right.
That's tough. They can't be doing that. One of them was the Ronald Acuna Jr. versus Craig Kimbrell bases loaded hit with from last night in the 7th. That's
right.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, and just to break down individually, Corbin Carroll had a fun slash line, 300,
Yes.
500, 600 for an 1100 OPS, along with a couple stolen bases as well. Obviously, that's what Corbin Carroll is going to do. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. had a 923 OPS. Ketel Marte was at 1,000. Gabriel Moreno was at 1091. Tommy Pham at 1071. Alec Thomas at 930, and Christian Walker at 1095. And as a team, they had a 947 OPS and slugged 588, which is very, very just unbelievable, especially for a team. They had a below average offense according to OPS Plus heading into this postseason. But yeah, they just seem to be clicking it on at the exact right time as well.
So we have a bit of predicament. I'll get into this later, but we have a bit of a predicament for the Braves Phillies series to recap. Anyway, I'll get into that later. But yeah, I mean, Corbin Carroll has looked amazing these playoffs. Like when in a LDS where Betts and Freeman both struggled, where Acuna and Olsen both struggled, as like the top 4 for NL MVP, Corbin Carroll looked amazing this entire series, and he has the entire playoffs. His OPS is above 1,400 for the playoffs entirely, as you just mentioned. He's been kind of going crazy for the Diamondbacks in October.
Yeah, it's like, and you love to see that. I mean, the fact that he's, I think, still 22 out there and just taking it over and leading this team. And yeah, it was funny actually. I think before the postseason even started, David Cohn had a quote, and he was comparing Corbin Carroll to Derek Jeter in Derek Jeter's rookie year, which was 1996. That was the year where the Yankees started their late 90s, early 2000s dynasty and won that World Series. And I funnily pointed out that Corbin Carroll had a better rookie season than Derek Jeter. That's but the point of what David Cohn said was, the team looks to Corbin Carroll, despite the fact that he's 22 years old, despite the fact that he's a rookie and didn't play more than 30 MLB games before the season started. They still look to him and view him as some sort of leader, which is, that's pretty unbelievable to have. No matter no matter the talent, no matter how good you perform on the field, sometimes it's hard for guys to get that, get that notoriety among their own clubhouse. But Corbin Carroll seems to have that effect, according to some people, inside and who have some more inside information. And he is leading by example right now by performing, being one of the best performers in this playoffs, just straight up, no matter team, no matter series, no matter position. He's one of the best players in this playoffs right now.
The Diamondbacks signed him to an extension before the season started, and like you mentioned, only 30 MLB games under his belt before this season, and that was enough for the Diamondbacks to say we've seen enough. 32 games, yeah. And they signed him to an 8-year, $111 million extension. He might already be underpaid.
Yeah, right.
Like, obviously, if he didn't sign the extension, he'd be even more underpaid. But like the Diamondbacks got him at a very good, a very, very good deal this early into his career. Like we've seen guys that signed extensions with teams, very early, sometimes before they even made their major league debut. I don't think we've seen one that has worked out the way that this one looks to be working out right now with Corbin Carroll.
Yeah. Outside of I mean, so far it's working maybe a little bit better than maybe even like Ronald Acuna's deal after what he signed after his rookie year. Because Acuna had that unfortunate.
But Acuna also had a rookie of the year under his belt. Like it made sense. Like Corbin Carroll had 32 MLB games.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, they obviously.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe Scott Kingery. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe him. But yeah, like, there's there might be an argument that he's underpaid, because I know his free agent years, they were bought off at like, I don't know, 27, 28 million, where if he signed an extension like that now, maybe that's like 35 million. Who knows? I mean, he's playing like a guy worth that. And I mean, we know how, team control works, and obviously the first 6 years of your career, you're probably going to be underpaid, but yeah, that's the circumstance he's in. But yeah, as far as his playoff performance, it is absolutely elite. As far as the Diamondbacks playoff performance goes, it is also just absolutely elite. And I'm excited to see how this carries over into the NLCS, because they have a tough task with the Philadelphia Phillies, but they already passed a tough task with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean I really hope that series is competitive, but we'll have to see.
Yes, we will indeed have to see. Anything more before we get into the last series?
No, let's talk about these Phillies and these Braves.
So yeah, this was the longest series out of the NL playoffs so far. It is it was the Phillies and Braves. The Phillies, we had an episode after they split the first two games. Phillies won game 3, 10-2, and then won game 4, 3-1. And had control for a large part of the series, or in a large part of these last two games. And what were your thoughts on these last couple games?
Yeah, I mean the Phillies, they still haven't. The only team that's beaten them at Citizens Bank Park, I believe, is in the last 2 years in the playoffs, is the Astros, who are just the team that does the things that no one's supposed to do, like win the LDS as a team with a bye. But yeah, I mean, like the Braves are 0 for 4 now, like trying to win games at CBP. Between 2022 and 23, and I mean the Phillies, after game 1, it really just looked like the Phillies were outright the better team. They win the Rangers Suarez game. They win a bullpen game essentially. They shut out the Braves. The Braves scored, for how as good as that offense was all regular season, they scored 8 runs in 4 games. 5 of those were in one of the games. So in the games they lost, they scored a grand total of 3 runs.
Right. Yeah. It's another thing where like you can't look completely at starting pitching or what have you. It's about, what your offense is doing. And as far as the Phillies offense, they were pretty unbelievable throughout the especially in game 3, but also, did enough in games 1 and 4 as well. Nick Castellanos, I think it's, well known now. He was the first player in playoff history with back-to-back multi-homer games. Did it in game 3 and game 4, and was the difference maker in game 4. I mean, they won that game by 2 runs, which, they wouldn't have been able to do without the Castellanos home runs. And Castellanos had a 1796 OPS in the series. Bryce Harper was close to that with a 1765 OPS in that series. And Trey Turner with a measly 1441 OPS in this series. He also has a 1455 OPS throughout the playoffs in these 6 games, firing on all cylinders. And going into game 3, obviously the Phillies didn't need a crazy. Ultimately they didn't need a crazy starting pitching performance, but Aaron Nola did very well and also ate up some innings for them. He went 5 2/3 innings, 2 runs allowed, 1 walk, and 9 strikeouts. He had a 33% whiff rate, 49% chase rate, and 21% sweet spot rate. And it was the most swings out of the zone against a pitcher in a playoff game this year. And out of 403 playoff starts with 50+ pitches thrown out of the zone in the pitch tracking era, Nola had the 4th highest chase rate in a game. So he was getting the Braves to swing out of the zone a lot, 49% of the time, which is a crazy amount. League average is around 28%, and he was at 49%. So he had a great game. And as far as game 4 goes, you have some numbers on another starter who unfortunately had not his ideal outing, not a disaster outing, but not his ideal outing.
Yeah, I mean, Spencer Strider had, when you look at it, ultimately 5 2/3 innings and 3 earned runs is enough to keep your team in a game, certainly. But, he had a lot of things that just weren't working for him, particularly his slider. He gave up a home run in the second, or in the 5th inning to Trey Turner on the slider, right? And then he also gave one up to Castellanos that tied the game. In the 4th inning. So he gave up 2 home runs against his slider. He also gave up an extra base hit, but another double to Trey Turner. But so going into his slider very specifically, 77.3% of his sliders were in game day zone 5, which is right down the middle or outside the strike zone. And it's not even a good outside the strike zone where it starts in and goes out and he gets a chase. They were just not competitive pitches. 77.3% of all sliders were either down the middle, the most hittable, or not even worth swinging at all. And that is the 5th highest rate for him in any game this year. So the slider wasn't working for him. And because of that, he had to really depend on his fastball. He had 70.8% fastball usage, which was the highest for him in any game this year. So by the time it got late in the game, by the time it was the 5th through 7th inning, every Phillies hitter was pretty much just sitting on the fastball every single time because they had to. Prior to the Castellanos home run in the 7th in the 6th inning that ultimately took him out of the game, 18 of his last 20 pitches had been four-seam fastballs. That's 90%, right? I mean, so obviously you have to be sitting fastball, and he left one over the plate for Castellanos on the 96 pitch that he threw. It was still 100 miles an hour, which is crazy that he was throwing that hard the entire game. But, ultimately his secondary pitch wasn't working, so we had to rely a little too much, I think, on his primary pitch. And ultimately, he paid the price for it with a 3rd home run given up.
Yeah, and it seemed like pitch selection was affected by, the sort of ineffectiveness his slider had, or lack of effectiveness, the lack of effectiveness that it usually has. And yeah, in that last Castellanos at bat where he gave up, his 3rd home run of the game, or Strider's 3rd home run of the game, I tweeted about it. I'll include an image of the game day zone, or of the game day, coverage of where the pitches were. But it was, the last home run he gave up was the 3rd fastball in a row, and pretty much the exact same spot to Nick Castellanos. And, I know that pitch can be effective if you set up, a slider down before that, but when it's your 3rd pitch in a row at the same exact location, it seems like it's not going to be as effective as you want it to be. And that it seemed like maybe he was kind of in a forced, he was sort of forced to do that, depending on, maybe he didn't have as much confidence in his slider as he usually does. So he threw his 3 consecutive fastballs in the same exact location and got a bad result on it, and then eventually was taken out of the game pretty much right after it. So yeah, it wasn't his best, but he did not have the support of his offense, unfortunately. Throughout the series, the Braves had the worst expected WOBA among all the LDS teams. They had the lowest barrel rate among all the LDS teams. It's pretty wretched from a Braves perspective there.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough, but Spencer Strider gave up 7 hits overall. 4 of them were against his slider, and he only threw 22 sliders compared to 68 four-seamers. So that's another way of saying his slider just wasn't very effective, and it forced him to rely, I think, a little too heavily on his fastball. But ultimately, it's the Braves' offense. Yeah, I mean, 8 runs in 4 games, 3 in the 3 losses is inexcusable for a team that had a 125 weighted runs created plus throughout the season. Acuna. Obviously, he had that 7th inning at bat where, he put together a very good plate appearance against Craig Kimbrell. Unfortunately, flew out to deep center. Johan Rojas made a nice catch on him, but, he had 143 during the series, which he ultimately can't do. Matt Olson hit 250 with a 544 OPS. Really, the only Braves hitter that showed up through and through was Austin Riley, who hit 353 with a 1059 OPS. He had 2 home runs during the series. Going back to this little controversy that I had, if you look at the the StatCast search radial chart on the Braves barrels, it shows the Acuna flyout, so it shows that it was a barrel, one of the 4 that they had all series. But if you look at the actual StatCast, the game log, the thing that you click on at the top of the page during the game, where it shows every batted ball, it doesn't have the little green highlight around it, so maybe it wasn't a barrel.
Yeah, that is quite the controversy.
Yeah, was it a barrel or not? We don't know.
We'll
No one really
never.
knows, actually.
Yeah, we'll never know. Also, the Braves, along with having the lowest barrel rate, with a 4% barrel rate, which I think would probably be less than, definitely less than half of their regular season rate. They also had the 2nd lowest sweet spot rate, so not putting it in the ideal area of the launch angle spectrum. That means less line drives and less fly balls, pretty much. Less good quality line drives and fly balls is what that means. Is them not putting it in the sweet spot zone. And teams who were able to do that had more success. Actually, I'm on the barrel leaderboard, but as far as teams who had good sweet spot zones, they were having more success. I imagine the Diamondbacks were doing that. Yeah, the Phillies and Diamondbacks led in sweet spot percentage in this past LDS round. So, and the Braves were 2nd lowest. So, there's a correlation between that and offensive success. And the Braves didn't do that. Dodgers didn't do that in their series. And yeah, kind of disappointing. But yeah, I mean, shout out to the Phillies. They seem to just be built for the postseason. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, they're a different animal. I mean, playoff CBP is obviously a crazy atmosphere. It's I mean, it's loud. I mean, if you I don't know if you saw the videos of the Bryce Harper home run in game 3, or one of the Bryce Harper home runs in game 3, without the commentary and just the crowd. It's among the loudest in any sport.
Yeah, and it seems like once you start trailing the Phillies at CBP in the playoffs, it seems like it's over. And that's why I looked into the game logs of their games at CBP during the playoffs, and the Phillies have now taken 12 leads at Citizens Bank Park in the playoffs in the last 2 years. 12 leads, and the team has come back to tie twice, and they've come back to take the lead once, and they've kept that lead 0 times. So once the Phillies have gotten a lead, the past 10 playoff games at CBP, they have won that game. Any game they have a lead, they win the game. The Astros, when they won those 2 games against them last year at Citizens Bank Park, the Astros, they had a lead and they kept it, and they didn't let the Phillies get a lead at all in those games, and that's probably a large part of the reason why they won. So yeah, it puts a lot of pressure on starting pitching, for sure, but yeah, it seems like that crowd, like once they have that lead, you need to silence them early, and if you don't silence them early, it's going to be a really tough day for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is just a different place to play pretty clearly, as we've seen throughout these playoffs. I mean, the fact that, the Braves in 2 different 100-win seasons went 0-2 there, says a lot. The Padres, who had just dismantled the 110-win Dodgers, couldn't win a game there. Only team that's done so is the Houston Astros, naturally, who did it twice.
Yeah, naturally. And yeah, it would be funny, like with all this parity and lack of expectation or lack of things going as expected in this playoffs, if we just got another Astros Phillies World Series.
It seems like that might be where we're headed.
It seems like we could be going there. Fate meets itself once again. But before we get into previews, there was some controversy, non-baseball savant related in this series.
Yeah. So I figured we should talk about Arcia-Gate. After game 2, when Michael Harris made that great catch, they doubled off Bryce Harper to end the game. The Braves were celebrating in the clubhouse, and Orlando Arcia said, like, aha, attaboy Harper, or something like that. Right? That's what it was. And it ended up getting reported because there were a lot of national media in that clubhouse at the time. Jake Mintz, who is one of the Cespedes Family Barbecue guys. I've been following them for a while. I think they do great work, but that's ultimately who reported it. And there's been a lot of talk about this. And by the way, like my first initial take on this is like, if the Braves genuinely believe that like the backlash that came from that affected their play in games 3 and 4, that's super lame. Like that's a lame excuse. And if that actually affects you, then like you're not a good team. I don't care how many games you won. Like you can't let that get to you. That's insane. I don't know. I just really don't like that it became such a huge deal. I don't blame the Phillies for using it as motivation if they did, because it's just a little playoff banter. Like I'm sure, like I'd be very surprised if this was the first time that someone trash talked the other team in a clubhouse with reporters present. And I bet there have been plenty of times where that happened and it never went reported. It's not like he was throwing like personal insults out at Bryce Harper or like his family or anything. Like in that case, then yeah, I think it absolutely needs to be reported. But I don't know. I think it's very weird that this ended up being such a big story.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there is something to the fact that teams like there's a thing called bulletin board material. And I think teams enjoy that, depending on the player, that, they might want to go up to the plate with that type of energy going for them. I know, like, specifically with like football and basketball players, like Tom Brady and Michael Jordan loved to use things, going against them, or use some type of fuel to push them over the edge competitively. And if that translates, that may in fact just translate in baseball too. And Bryce Harper hit 2 home runs, but I know that first one was anyone was hitting a home run off of that pitch. It was it was the most hanging of hanging changeups in the world. And then the second one, very good piece of hitting. I think it was a breaking ball on the edge of the strike zone. But Bryce Harper's a very good hitter. He hits those types of pitches. But ultimately, yeah, it was kind of weird. It was a big topic of conversation in the journalism world, because people were talking about it. There was a little bit of gatekeeping from the everyday Braves reporters, or just general everyday reporters. I know Alana Rizzo had a big rant on Christopher Russo's show.
That rant sucked. I will say that.
It was,
that rant really sucked.
It was something. It was something for sure. And I kind of see a little bit of both sides. I think if I were there, I don't think I'd want to if I were there in that situation, I don't think I'd want to report it. I think the risk would outweigh the reward a little bit. But granted, if you're Orlando Arcia, you know that media members are there. You know you have time when media members aren't there. And you also know that there are areas of the clubhouse where media members are not, are not given permission to go. And you can say whatever you want unreported over there. So
Yeah.
I do see both sides of it, but I don't think anyone can really be too mad at the situation.
I think the thing that actually sucks was after game 3, when they asked Arcia about it, he said, like, no, he wasn't supposed to hear that. That's why I said in the clubhouse, which I also think is super lame. Like, if you're going to say that, like, you're going to, like, you either got to double down on it or you got to just, like, deny it or whatever. Like, I think that was the worst possible response you could have had. Because, like, I don't know, it's weird to admit, like, yes, I'm trash talking a guy behind his back because I don't want to do it to his face. Right? Like, I think that's just a weird thing to do. And, like, Bryce Harper stared him down after both home runs. So, like, obviously it meant something to him. Like, he used it for some kind of competitive edge, and clearly it worked. Like, if it works, I'm not going to tell you not to do it because, whatever works. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to say that, like, I think you got to stick with it. You can't just abandon it because, it worked against you.
Yeah. And, I think as far as I know, like, reporters, there's a certain grace period between guys getting into the clubhouse and media members being allowed in the clubhouse, and you can do your trash talking during that time or after, who knows. But yeah, I mean, to report it seemed more gossipy than reporting. I will be honest about that. Even having a little bit of the whatever journalism perspective I have, but it was a thing said during the reporting period or during the media period. So you can't be too mad at it.
Yeah, I mean, I like Jake Mintz, and I like the work that he and Jordan do over at Cespedes Barbecue. Like, I've been following them for a while. I'm sure you probably have as well, Chris. But, like, they do good work, and he also wrote a really good story before the series about, like, a kind of inside Acuna's season, talking about how he almost didn't play in the World Baseball Classic, but then Miguel Cabrera convinced him to, and, like, he's done some really good work, and, like, he's a guy that deserves to be in those clubhouses, like, no doubt about it. Could the story have gone unreported? Probably. I don't even think it's a story. I think it's just, guy banters at the other team during a moment of, like, competitiveness, right? Because, I mean, if you're the Braves, right, going into this series, you had much more to lose than you had to win because, you were a 104 win team. You had the best offense in baseball, and you also lost in the first round of these Phillies last year. And anything less than at least going to the World Series would be a massive disappointment. And even not winning it would have been a disappointment as well. And, like, after you lose game 1 in just a really quiet, boring, depressing way, like you did, like, you need someone to pick the boys back up in the clubhouse. And game 2 was everything they could have asked for, right? Like, it was a hard fought win, come from behind win, exclamation point ending. So, like, I get, I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, being fired up after the game. And I don't even think there's anything wrong with what Arcia said. But, and, like, like I said, like, when you're in that situation, when there's that much pressure on you to win this series and there's more to lose than there is to win, like, I'm not gonna say you shouldn't say this because reporters are there and whatever. But, there is that grace period before reporters are actually allowed into the clubhouse. And, there's moments when, like, you're on the field celebrating, you're, doing the handshakes or whatever, you're in the dugout going to the clubhouse. It could have been, if that was something he needed to get out, he could have done it when reporters weren't there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a thing where, well, both things can be true. You could, be justified in saying it. And, it wasn't anything crazy that he said. It's just a little bit of banter. But
like,
also,
I don't even think Bryce Harper, like, faults him for saying that.
No. I could see Bryce Harper doing the same thing, in the Braves direction. So, I totally understand him saying that, getting the guys fired up. But I also, you also can't get mad at the reporter who's reporting on you saying that when you're in the media area and you're saying that. So I think both things can be true there.
Yeah, I mean, Orlando Arcia has played for the playoffs numerous times. He's been there for the Braves. He was there for the Brewers. He went to the NLCS with the Brewers. Like, this is not his first rodeo.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all.
You know, like if they had, like, I don't know, someone like Pierce Johnson saying that, then like maybe it's a little different there.
Yeah, or like, I don't know, Vaughn Grissom or
Vaughn Grissom would have been a better option, actually.
yeah, right. But I mean, what is Pierce Johnson? Yeah, or he played for the Padres.
He did. He played for the Padres last year.
Yeah, right. So that is it for the media controversy. But just one last thing to get into about the series. I think a lot of people are talking about the long layoff for the 1 and 2 seeds. You know, the 1 and 2 seeds went 1 and 3 in these series, in these LDSs. They went 2 and 2 last year with, you know, one of those teams going to 5 games, or one of the winners going to 5 games. And you know, it's an interesting topic of conversation because of how these teams have been performing in these series in the 2 years that they've had them. And I think there's a couple of counters to that. You know, obviously, I think the biggest example is the Astros. They've been 6-1 in these series. You know, which is something to say. I mean, their postseason success. It doesn't matter when they play. It just seems like they're going to have that. And then as far as the layoff for other teams, like the Braves had 5 days off. When they won the World Series in 2021, they had 4 days off. You know, it's an extra 24 hours. And I guess the counteract, you know, the counter argument to that is the fact that the Brewers, when the Braves faced them in the 2021 NLDS, they also had a 4-day layoff. But in this period of time where there were longer layoffs, the 2018 Red Sox, 2016 Cubs, and 2013 Red Sox all had 4-day layoffs and faced teams that had previously played in the wild card round. And in
Also, the 2015 Royals as well.
The 2015 Royals had faced a team with they had a 4-day
they faced the Astros.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the 2015 Royals as well, and the 2013 Red Sox, they also faced the Rays, who had played 2 games before, 2 games
during a 163 and then a
layoff.
wild card game.
Yeah. A game 163 and a wild card game. So, you know, I think we're just reacting based on these 2 years. I don't think this is necessarily a sign of things to come. I think it just happened this way, and the Phillies are a juggernaut, so it's not a discredit to them. That, you know, the fact that the Braves lost to them is not shocking to really anybody, especially this year.
No, I mean, I think we knew going in that was going to be the best series, and the Phillies had a very good chance, despite being 14 games behind them in the division standings this year. You know, maybe you could point to it a little more with the Dodgers and Diamondbacks, especially with, you know, the Diamondbacks sweeping that series and just looking like an outright so much better team, despite having, I think, 16 less wins. But, you know, I mean, we knew the Dodgers rotation was going to be a big question mark. We knew that, you know, like, the Diamondbacks were coming off a series against the Brewers where they had multiple come from behind victories, and that they've been very streaky all year. And that they also played the Dodgers very well this year, as a whole. So, yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, like, in the whole, like, we should change the playoff format to better cater to the 100 win teams argument. Like, I think it's only been 2 years, and we should probably pump the brakes a little bit. I think it's very reactionary because the Braves and Dodgers lost twice in a row, because the Orioles lost this year, you know, with a team that ultimately didn't have a very good rotation coming in, right? Like, yeah, you know, I understand that they did get swept, but they're also a team with very limited playoff experience, something that matters. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think if there's any valid criticism of this playoff format, it's that the wild card series just hasn't given us many exciting moments.
Right. Yeah.
And also, to counter that, we've had, you know, every year that this playoff format has existed, a 6 seed who, you know, otherwise would not have made it to the playoffs at all, have reached the championship series, and we could have 2 years in a row with a team reaching the World Series that ultimately wouldn't have made the playoffs in various other years.
Yeah, exactly. And as far as the Dodgers go, also, in 2017, the last time they faced the Diamondbacks in a playoff series, they had a 4-day layoff. between
Mhm.
between regular season and postseason, and the Dodgers swept the Diamondbacks after that. So, I don't think the extra 24 hours made the difference between a Dodger sweep and a Diamondback sweep. I just think that's just how the cards fell in this past series. Yeah, yeah, and these 6 seeds are very exciting. Gives an opportunity a little bit. With at least with the Diamondbacks, like an early arriving team, a team that maybe a smaller market, but had had some competitive edge to them. They can come in and they can rock the playoffs a little bit, which is exciting to a degree. We've seen the Dodgers win a World Series in the past few years. We've seen the Braves win one in the past few years. There's something exciting about these newer teams coming in and dominating the postseason.
I was gonna
Except for the
say,
Astros.
like, I understand being a fan of one of these teams that gets bounced early and being frustrated, but like parity is good in these sports. Like, it's good to go into the playoffs not knowing what's gonna happen. Like, the last time an 8 seed beat a 1 seed in the NBA was in 2010. Like, it's fun that there's no safe bet in baseball as playoffs right now. Like, people talk about the Stanley Cup playoffs as like the best playoffs in sports because it's the most unpredictable. Baseball is kind of catching up, right?
Yeah.
Like, the Diamondbacks sweeping was something nobody could have realistically said, last week. And they not only did they sweep, but they dominated all 3 games.
Exactly. Yeah. And these playoffs won't take 6 months to get through, like the NHL playoffs.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they're cool. They're cool over there. Yeah. That's pretty much all I got on it. Anything more before we preview these series?
Now let's talk about it.
So yeah, we have the Astros and Rangers, the All Texas ALCS. Fun thing. I think these are two of the more exciting teams in the league, in the junior circuit, I believe, as they call it, as the people call it. The
The
Astros,
American League.
yeah, I think so. The junior circuit, because the NL,
I mean,
the NL is the senior circuit.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. Is Ban Johnson gonna like hearing that?
I mean, if Van Johnson or any of his relatives have anything to say, comment in our comment section.
Yeah.
All grievances go to the Above Replacement Radio comment section on YouTube.
Yeah.
But as far as the season series, the Astros dominated, went 9-4 against the Rangers, and outscored the Rangers 93-74. There were some really good offensive performances by the Astros against the Rangers this year. Chas McCormick had a 14.38 OPS against the Rangers and 38 plate appearances. Altuve had a 12.28 OPS and 38 plate appearances. Kyle Tucker had a 12.21 OPS in 56 plate appearances, and Yordan Alvarez had a 12.01 OPS in 34 plate appearances. And against the Astros, Marcus Semien did very well with a 12.14 OPS in 59 plate appearances against Houston. So, teams have a lot of familiarity against each other. They've been in the same division for the last 12 years now, or 11 years now, since 2013.
Right.
What are you thinking about this one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the all Texas aspect of this is very fun. The Yordan Alvarez Corey Seager matchup is going to be very fun because those are the best 2 hitters. I mean, now that Betts and Acuna and Freeman and Olsen are out, we can say that these are the best 2 hitters still in the playoffs, like comfortably. Maybe Corbin Carroll at number 3 there, but I mean, Corey Seager has been excellent for the Rangers all playoffs. He's had a lot of extra base hits, a lot of home runs. Yordan Alvarez, I mean, come on. Like, I think he singled in game 4 and his OPS for the series went down.
Yeah, right.
I'm pretty sure that happened.
Just to are you talking about, or no, not Trey Turner? Who? Corey
Yordan Alvarez.
Jordan. Oh yeah.
I'm pretty sure he had a single in game 4 and his OPS for the series dropped.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, because I think he entered game 4 at a 22 OPS,
2205. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's awesome.
And just so the Harper stands don't get mad, Harper is also in the running for best postseason bat.
Yeah.
He's also been quite amazing.
I
Yeah,
mean,
the
Jordan Alvarez is just he's ridiculous. Yeah, he had a 1780 despite only going one for four in game 4, he had a 1784 OPS in that round.
yeah, right after the Revolutionary War.
Yep.
It's a quality year there. But yeah, that
Yeah,
was
I
his
mean, like
OPS.
anytime your OPS is a year that like someone can tell you something that happened in, like, don't get me wrong, 938 is a good OPS, but what happened in the year 938? I don't know.
Yeah, that might have been the Renaissance period. I don't know. I don't know history that well, unfortunately. I know baseball history a little bit, but baseball history started in
Yeah,
1845,
you need to be
according to
insane.
some people. Um, yeah, National League started in 1871, 1876-ish. Uh, but but yeah, as far as the series go, I'm really excited about it. I think just the Astros, I think we could agree still, despite their good series against the Twins, they're not the same Astros that they were last year.
Mhm.
Still means they could win the World Series. I mean, this Astros team is fully capable of it, but I think it creates a less of a mismatch as it would have last year. I think the starting pitching matchups are going to be pretty fun, especially at the top with it's probably going to be Verlander versus Montgomery, and then Eovaldi versus Valdez. I think that's going to be fun. And as far as the season series goes, I'm not really worried about it because that does not seem to translate to postseason.
No.
Look at the Dodgers and Diamondbacks. Look at the Braves and Phillies. That did not translate really at all.
Yeah, no, Zach Gallen, who had a 990 ERA against the Dodgers this year, came out and shoved.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, by the way, like going back to my take on Jordan and Corey Seager being the best hitters left in the playoffs, that my logic is a combination of regular season and postseason hitting. And like Corey Seager was like Bryce Harper's been a better hitter in the playoffs than Corey Seager objectively. Like that's a fair take.
yeah,
But Corey Seager was like, if not for Shohei Ohtani, would have been the MVP in the American League this year. And Jordan is otherworldly as a hitter.
absolutely.
Like
Yeah,
I think Jordan might be the best. And I know that a lot of people aren't gonna like me using this term, but I'm gonna use the P word. I think Jordan Alvarez might be the best pure hitter in baseball.
Oh, wait. What are we?
Yeah.
What are we? I mean,
Yeah.
Luis Rise, he went out there and he had 350 whatever he did.
He
Yeah.
had 354. Yeah, no, I mean Jordan is a ridiculously good hitter. I know he only hit 293 this year. He had a down year with a 990 OPS and 400. By the way, he was like, I know Jordan missed some time. He was 5 plate appearances away from qualifying for the batting title, and he
That's
had
yeah,
a year
that's
1000
surprising.
OPS, and he had the quietest near 1000 OPS ever.
Yeah.
Like he's still that guy.
Yeah, he's pretty amazing. He's pretty amazing out there. You know, didn't reach the qualifying threshold, but still matched 30 homers. Um, got on
Like
base over
yeah,
40% of the time, slugged almost 600. Yeah, he's that guy. He is absolutely that guy. And the Rangers are gonna have to game plan for him. Yeah, he had a 1201 OPS against the Rangers this year. So, you know, it's gonna have to be some game planning there. Yeah, this is exciting. But I think my mindset just going into it automatically assumes the Astros are going to win here. Even with the Rangers doing as well as they are, it just seems like the Astros are just that winning machine. What are what's your mindset heading into this one?
I'll explain my prediction logic a little later. I am gonna pull up some more numbers on Jordan Alvarez. So according to StatHat, as I'm doing this search right now, and I'm stalling my words because it isn't loading, he is one of 28 hitters in baseball history between the major leagues, the Negro leagues, between everything, to have a 950 OPS with at least 2,000 plate appearances. And his 978 OPS ranks between Aaron Judge and Mickey Mantle.
Yeah, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I was about to look up Judge's career OPS, and yeah, it's right around where
982.
where Jordan is at. So yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah, for me, this is a hard one to predict. I didn't prepare
Mhm.
predictions. I'm just kind of going on the fly.
Yeah.
Um, And what I predict might not be what I end up rooting for, because I think, it's you kind of want to root for the Rangers in this situation. I mean, the Astros have won. They've won 2 in the last, 6 years. They won 1 last year. Like, they've had their shot. Rangers had some heartbreak. And it would be fun to see them win one. But yeah, I think my predictions might go against that. Do you have a particular prediction for this one?
I do. I'm gonna use the same logic that I did for last series, which was I can absolutely see the Rangers winning this series. I wouldn't think it's too outlandish to go Rangers in 7. But I saw a video, Chris. I saw a video on the internet of Rangers fans doing the "We Want Houston" chant. So I'm gonna have to say Astros in 6. You can't do it. Like you don't like one day they're gonna learn, but that is not today. You can't do it. You can't do it. It doesn't work.
Yeah, no,
Like I said this on Twitter this week, but you could show me a video of like Nationals fans doing it in 2019 or Braves fans doing it in 2021, and I would say it's fake because no one does that chant and has it work.
yeah, exactly.
And is it stupid logic to go on? Maybe, but I used it last round and I was clearly right. And that's definitely the reason why the Astros won, not because they were just a better team than the Twins at all.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Definitely not. Yeah, as far as this series for me, I'm definitely leaning the Astros. It just depends on how many games they get. And I with the Rangers, I won't be surprised. I'm gonna fail to be surprised by what they do. They really surprised me against the Rays by sweeping them. I believed in them for the Baltimore series, and they came through on that by less games than I predicted for them. But I'm gonna stick with the Astros here. It's the postseason winning machine, and I say the Rangers are going to be decently competitive, and the Astros are going to take it in 6 as well. I'm going to match your prediction there, by taking the Astros in 6. Anything more before we get into Phillies-Diamondbacks?
I mean, yeah, it's gonna be fun. I think I'll throw in a bonus prediction. I think the Rangers win games 2 and 4.
Solid, yeah. The Evaldi Valdez matchup, and then whatever teams throughout.
Whatever they threw out in game 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably what Urquidy versus maybe like Andrew Heaney or something.
Yeah, or I wonder what the Rangers' 4th option, Dane Dunning, maybe. I don't know.
And Dunning. I feel like they might go Dunning over Heaney in game 3.
Or it could be a situation where they throw out Montgomery again on short rest. Who knows? But yeah, we will see. We will be happy to see. With Phillies-Diamondbacks, the Phillies won the season series 4-3, and they outscored the Diamondbacks 44-34. What are your thoughts heading into this one?
I mean, there's a very fun hidden narrative here, which is that Evan Longoria will be getting his long-awaited revenge, or seeking his long-awaited revenge on the Phillies from 2008. It is extremely fun that he's facing the Phillies in the playoffs for the 2nd time, with the first time being 15 years ago. I don't know. This one is definitely, it feels like a lot more unpredictable because the Phillies just have looked like, they dismantled the Marlins, they dismantled the Braves. The Diamondbacks did the same to the Brewers and Dodgers. I think the Phillies just feel like the better team on paper, but the Diamondbacks, I thought, looked like a worse team on paper than the Brewers and a much worse team on paper than the Dodgers. So I don't know. I'm gonna go stuff of vibes, and I'm gonna go Philly in 7.
Philly in 7. I'd
Yeah.
appreciate that. I'd appreciate a winner take all game. We have not seen, especially a winner take all game in Philadelphia. Jeez Louise.
This is the first time I'm predicting the Diamondbacks to win a game, by the way. I had Brewers in 2, and then I had Dodgers in 3. And they haven't lost a single game.
Yeah.
So
It's true.
maybe for their own sake, I should say Philly in 4, but I do think they win games this series.
Well, if you predict Phillies in 7, just based on the law of opposites, the Diamondbacks
They will be Phillies in 4, yeah.
or Diamondbacks in 7, because
fair
then
enough, yeah.
you'd expect the Phillies to win each game that the Diamondbacks win. And
Are the Diamondbacks capable of winning a game 7 in Philadelphia?
I mean, I've I've been shocked by
They're
them
capable
twice.
of it, yes, because if they're capable of sweeping the Dodgers, they're capable of anything. But like that's just so tough.
Yeah. I mean, with all that being said, I am taking Phillies in 5. I don't
Yeah.
know. I just feel like they I said this last time I said this for the last 2 series with the Diamondbacks in them, but I feel like the Phillies overmatched them. And I feel like that Arizona bullpen is due to crack. I feel like they're just doing too well right now. And, I feel like just based on law of averages, they might crack, and it's going to be against this Phillies offense. This Phillies offense is riding pretty hot, doing pretty well, whether it be against the Marlins or against the Braves. So, yeah, I'm going to take Phillies in 5. But I'm rooting for that game 7. I'd like to see a winner take all game because we haven't seen one since the freaking Joe Musgrove Pine Tar in the Year game.
Does that doesn't count as a game 7? I think the last game 7 was 2020 NLCS.
Yeah, the last game 7. But as far as winner take all games,
Yeah,
it's been a really long time. And yeah, shout out to the 2020 playoffs. They were like an amazing playoffs. It just didn't feel that way because there was no crowd.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we had 2 winner take alls in the wild card round. We had how many in the division series? There was the Yankees Rays one. There was the Astros one wasn't.
I think that was it. And then
That was it. Yeah.
And then 2 game 7s in the LCS and a
Yeah,
pretty
right.
good World Series.
That's right. There were 2 game 7s in the LCS, and then yeah. No, I mean if those playoffs had, non-neutral sites, that would have been fire, and
Oh yeah.
fans.
Oh yeah, like the Astros coming back would have 2 of those games would have been at Minute Maid.
Yep.
And that
Carlos
Ray,
Correa hit a walk-off home run, and it happened in San Diego with 0 fans.
that Brett Phillips big play.
Yeah, like that would have been in Tampa.
It would have been at the Trop. And the Mike Brasso homer against Aroldis Chapman would have been.
This one's also a bit grim, but like, Oakland won a game 3 at home. If there was fans, there could have been an easy case for, keeping the team in Oakland. They won a game. I believe the game they won against the Astros was at home technically, or was it game 3 on the road?
I think it might have been game 3 on the road.
Damn. Okay, well, we still would have seen those crowds.
Yeah, we still
in 2019 they sold out for the wild card game against the Rays.
Yeah, and they as you mentioned, they beat the White Sox in a winner take all. Came back against the White Sox in that series.
Yeah, they came back.
So yeah.
Which obviously in a normal year they probably wouldn't have played that series because they wouldn't have changed the playoff format.
That's true. That is true. And yeah, the Astros wouldn't have made the playoffs and beat them. But yeah, that does it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Check out all the features, the digital shorts, the playlists are, all of our guest interviews are in a playlist. The baseball history series is in a playlist. Go check all that out. It is Above Replacement Radio on YouTube, and follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show on Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking all the happenings of the League Championship Series in the next episode. See you then.
This conversation is over.